One of my favorite things to do at this time of year is to go back and reflect on the performance of each of my cohorts of customers in the previous year. And what I'm looking for is to identify where was my best return on invested capital? What month, what marketing events were occurring? What ads was I running? Where was I substantially off about the LTV expectations? Where was I right? Do any of these cohorts perform substantially different than the others? There's so much to be learned by looking at your investment. So often we're looking at the P&L, right? And it gives us the snapshot that sort of blends together new and returning customers as well as all these costs. But this view, the cohort specific view on a marginal basis, a marginal return basis, gives you the best insight into where you most effectively acquired profit in this previous year. So what this is showing me here is margin by customer by monthly cohort over time. So you can see we have my acquisition month, the number of new customers that I acquired, the cost to acquire the customers in that month. So my weighted CAC. So some of you would call this blended new customer CAC or NCAC. The COGS for that month. So what was the actual total cost of delivery for that period? And therefore, what was my first order profit and then subsequent total marginal return? And I can look at this both as margin by individual customer. I can look at this as total marginal dollars in that period of time. But the reason I like this view is because it gives me sort of an apples to apples comparison of the value of these customers over time. And what I'm looking for is I want to do an analysis to understand the biggest deltas. I want to understand my best cohort, my highest first order profit, as well as my highest total value in terms of LTV percentage increase. And so a number of things jump out when I do this analysis. One, I repeatedly see that if I were to sort of isolate this down, I like to go back and look at each cohort month by month. Okay. For many brands, and in this case, January was a massively profitable acquisition month. You can see that it was outside of November and December, my most profitable first order profit or new customer acquisition. And in terms of the LTV increase was incredibly strong, almost over, well over 100% in a year, which is kind of a gold standard that we use. And I look at these three cohorts in particular, November, December, and January. You'll see that easily these were the periods in which I was the most efficient on my new customer acquisition, both from the actual CAC basis. And even though my margin was worse in November, which is usually the case because it's a higher discounting month, I still had the highest first order profitability. And so one of the things I begin to think about is how can I allocate my dollars more effectively into the period of the best acquisition? So you can look alternatively, if I go look at April, look at the delta and the marginal value of these customers over time, right? Massive difference. Now, even though I wasn't first order profitable, we're profitable within 30 days. We got good velocity of LTV for this business. But what this begins to allow me to do is to go back and reflect on, okay, what did I do in April? And was this about an inefficiency of acquisition? It looks like my new customer acquisition was poor. Also, my COGS are higher in this month than any other. And I can begin to analyze what happened in that month. So the next step I take from here, once I identify my best and worst performing cohorts over time, is I go to look at the composition of this revenue. In particular, I start to look at first order value, 60-day LTV increase. What percentage of their revenue came from our key product? For this brand in particular, we know that one SKU generates better LTV than all the others. This product sells both men's and women's product. And so there are things that are substantially better than the others. So I look at this composition over time. I look at the first order profit, total new customer revenue, total new customer contribution, and then year-to-date ROIC, return on invested capital. And as a capital allocator, that's how I think of myself when I'm media buying. I want to think about, as we plan the budget for this year, how can I more effectively allocate my capital into the periods of highest investment? And so the insight that we were able to generate here is that, hey, we underspent January, and amazingly, as is almost always the case, we underspend November and December. Because again, there's all these rumors all the time about November and December being not profitable new customer acquisition. They're always your best cohorts, almost always, because the new customer acquisition is so much more efficient. So as we think about that, there's clearly a pattern here where what we sold in April, the lowest AOR, in this case, I'm trying to draw a distinction between average order revenue and average order value, big V value. So this is a strategic initiative. We can go begin to look at what we sold, why, how we can be more efficient, what ads were we running here, what would we change? And there's some very clear insights that we're able to generate in this process. So I would encourage you, find a tool. You can do this in Statlas.io, or you can do this in something like Lifetimely. Go look at your cohorts all of last year and try and determine what worked best. Where was my best return on invested capital? Are there changes that I would make to the budget allocation for the year? Are there strategic changes that I would make to replicate a sale, to take one out, to insert a different product focus in different seasons. Use this to figure out how to make more of your cohorts more profitable this year.